Hello, my name is John Guy Perrem, and today I'm going to give a presentation entitled Utilizing Maps as Inspirational Tools in EFL University Classes. I'll be showing the results of a study I conducted, and I hope you find this presentation useful for thinking about maps in relation to your own classes. Let's begin. Within the human experience, places are centers within which meaning usually unfolds through lived experiences and practices. Places of significance in our daily lives have the capacity to allow for what social scientists call a sense of place to be evoked in many ways. This sense of place facilitates relational bonds to develop between people and locations, and this in turn can generate a range of affective responses, such as responsibility, empathy, and feelings of authenticity. However, for many EFL students in Japan, the countries and places where English is spoken are geographically removed from their everyday experience. In this context, a risk exists of their language learning experiences occurring in a form of non-spatialized bubble without being rooted in cognitively tangible locations. While the actual physical locations may remain unavoidably distanced, geographical imagination may be used as a tool to inspire a sense of connectedness, interest, or even future plans to physically travel to English-speaking locations. We can identify these as imaginative practices of place rather than lived practices of place. Geographical imagination has the potential to be sparked by interweaving map questions into our EFL classes. Research has shown that maps can be effectively used by teachers to enhance students' learning in content language integrated learning scenarios and also to foster the learning of English. However, scant research has been conducted regarding the integration of map elements into EFL rather than CLIL classes in the Japanese education system, despite international research indicating that cultivating spatial intelligence assists with effective language learning. I'd like to discuss some points of departure for my study. While maps feature strongly in elective subjects connected to the built environment, earth sciences, or parts of social science, such as human and physical geography, their potential remains both under-examined and thus underutilized in EFL settings. As stated by Bednarz, Akasin, and Bednarz, maps are not just for geography anymore, so we need to think about them in new ways and adapt our approach to maps. By showing maps, questions, and associated cultural information, the unknown becomes more known territory for learners. In pedagogic terms, this can be conceptualized as the student beginning with a blank leaf of paper and gradually mapping territory as their knowledge and connection grows in relation to locations. Plentiful research has shown that utilizing a varied pedagogic approach is important in learning situations, and further, that it is central in promoting engagement amongst students. Integrating map questions and related elements into EFL lessons embodies an attempt on my part to manifest the philosophy of a beneficial, diverse approach, both in content and in overarching perspective, that learners are also becoming intercultural speakers, in addition to English speakers. While the study that I will present today is of an applied nature within the Japanese EFL university classroom context, it is beneficial to examine the underlying theoretical position, which informs the point of departure for my study. This particular point is rooted in Henri Lefebvre's theoretical framework as he conceptualized a spatial triad. This triad is an important theoretical construction in the production of space, but inspires usage beyond that setting in areas such as ecology and economics. Indeed, it inspired my initial considerations when considering EFL learners' in-class map usage in relation to geographically distanced English-speaking locations. The three parts of Lefebvre's triad include spatial practice, representations of space, and representational space. Spatial practice is the perceived physical space. Representations of space include maps and abstract conceptions. Representational space is considered to be the directly lived space. So to make this more concrete, for EFL learners in Japan, representational space in English-speaking countries cannot form a consistent constituent part of their localized everyday experiences. And as such, questions arise regarding their connectedness to those locations. For example, from a phenomenological perspective, the genius loci of a place, or in other words, its inherent qualities and particular atmosphere, as perceived by the individual, may remain inaccessible to many learners. It's important for instructors to focus not only on the target language, but also on the contextual strands attached to the language. A sense of connection or association with significant places is crucial. As Ralph states, a deep human need exists for associations with significant places. If we choose to ignore that need and to allow the forces of placelessness to continue unchallenged, then the future can only hold an environment in which places simply do not matter. And he continues further with that quote, but we have the key idea there. If students possess a strong sense of connection to a significant place in English-speaking countries, then there is an opportunity to develop empathetic attention and meaningful bonds. In a situation where students are learning English with meager references to the places from which the language emerges, then there is a risk of placelessness, blocking or interfering with optimum potential connections. Representational space involves being in a place, and to be in a place facilitates opportunities to make sense of it. Yet representations of spaces, such as maps, also allow for developing useful knowledge. This knowledge development occurs in myriad ways. Two fundamental ways have been identified. Number one is to establish where things are. And number two is to remember where things are to help us in the process of making decisions and solving problems. By charting this potential knowledge development onto EFL students, we can see the potential usefulness in both number one and number two. Regarding number one, for example, the utterance of city names or countries in passing helps transform them from being nebulous entities into more known elements. They become established and identified points and positioned in relation to the learner's home country, in this case, Japan. For number two, remembering where things are aids the learners in making decisions and in solving problems, such as where a native speaker they encounter is from, or in mixed cultural exchange scenarios. I would like to highlight the benefits for embracing map usage in the EFL classroom for a moment. For example, recent research on using maps in EFL classes, particularly conducted by Azana Haptagaber, has shown that it generates a need for more language in terms of vocabulary, sequencing, comparing, contrasting, and speculating. These are certainly worthy of consideration by educators in EFL contexts. Now I'll turn to the methodology utilized in my study regarding the usage of maps in EFL university classrooms. The study took place at Moran Institute of Technology. Moran IT is a public university located in Hokkaido, the northernmost prefecture in Japan. The university is focused on engineering and the hard sciences and has about 3,300 currently enrolled students. Within the relevant study, there were 103 respondents, and each of them were in the second year of their undergraduate degree. The respondents were spread across a total of 5 class groups that I was teaching. 3 of these were English communication classes, while the remaining 2 were general English seminar classes. 8 lessons had been completed in both the English communication and general English seminar classes when the MAP Perceptions Questionnaire, or MPQ, was conducted. English communication and general English seminar classes both consist of a 15-week program, and thus the MPQ was distributed at approximately halfway through the respective courses. The rationale underpinning the timing of conducting the MPQ near the halfway point in the program was so that the students would have had an opportunity to become amply familiar with map-related activities during our classes together. The MPQ was semi-anonymous. This means that students were not initially identifiable beyond the broad class group level when the MPQ was distributed and collected by myself. Class group sizes ranged from 23 to 29 students across both English communication and general English seminar classes. The methodological decision to make the MPQ anonymous was to enable respondents to provide their opinions without potential concerns regarding any negative consequences being actioned on their feedback. So I was hoping they could respond freely without having to worry about what their teacher thought. The MPQ itself comprised of a total of 7 questions. 6 of the questions were single answer multiple choice questions. In these questions, the respondents were asked to circle their answer among one of 4 options. The 7th question was an open question, allowing for any written comments regarding using maps in our EFL classes. This openness was an important component of the MPQ, as it allowed freedom for opinions to be expressed beyond the closed questions. Here we can see the 7 questions used in the MPQ. The 6 closed questions and the 7th open question. Both Japanese and English versions of the MPQ were available, and students could choose freely whichever one they preferred to use to answer. On the left, we can see the 4 response options that they could choose from. And yes, the open question, any response from the student was permissible in a comment form. I'd like to turn to the results of the study. For some background regarding the MPQ response rate, all of the respondents answered questions 1 to 6, while 29 answered question number 7. So 29 answered the open question. If we begin with number 1, question 1 in the MPQ was designed to assess the basic level of interest amongst the respondents in using maps in our classes. The results for question 1 are indicative of what will be detailed in the subsequent results sections. as the patterns retain a significantly positive characteristic, with the presence of a small but consistent negative vein running through the answers. Question 2 sought to tease out any potential differences in perceptions regarding enjoyment and visual engagement for the map usage compared to the interest factor presented in question 1. Research has shown that interest and enjoyment, while relational emotions, are not identical elements. The significantly positive results are encouraging when question 1 and question 2 of the MPQ are considered in tandem. They demonstrate that respondents were both enjoying and interested in using maps in the EFL classes. Respondents' perceptions regarding the ability of maps to generate interest in foreign countries, i.e. not Japan, through visual observations were examined in question 3. The results show encouraging figures for establishing the potential use of maps to strengthen interest in learners. Question 4 explored perceptions of interest linked specifically to learning through answering map questions, and thus it differs from question 1's aim of gauging general interest. An example was included in this MPQ question to assist respondents to conceptualize a typical aspect covered by map questions utilized in their classes. This question saw the highest responses for the definitively affirmative category thus far in the MPQ. This is an important result, as research has shown that students' self-assessment of not only the work they produce, but also what they are learning is valuable data. The penultimate closed question in the MPQ, question 5, investigated respondent preferences regarding intensifying map usage as a tool to learn about foreign countries. Each English communication class and general English seminar class were designed with a map component. And as such, this question sought to explore if there was a capacity for an intensification of this usage. While aspects of the preceding questions connected to the facets of geographical imagination, question 6 directly examined if maps activated a positive geographical imagination within the respondents. The question was designed to assess if this occurred in a significant enough way to stimulate inspiration for travel or to experience cultures in English-speaking countries. The results of this question are of particular importance because the responses indicate if the usage of maps manifests into the desires of the respondent to engage with physical locations and cultural mediums in the target language. A heartening result here demonstrated a clear linkage amongst the respondents between using maps in EFL classes that converted into positive inspirations and imagined scenarios for both travel and experiences. If we look at the responses, which can be classed as being positive overall by combining the yes and somewhat categories, we can see that the respondents have broadly positive perceptions regarding their map usage for questions 1 to 6. The overall positivity towards map usage expressed in responses so far was reflected in the comments for question 7, the final question of the MPQ. Again, this was an open qualitative style question allowing for comments regarding using maps in classes. And 29 of the 103 respondents chose to answer this question, which gives a response rate of about 28.1%. The overall positivity amongst the respondents regarding map usage was directly reflected in most comments with basic statements such as, I didn't know the location of countries even after hearing names, so it is a really good thing to know their location. Or, I think the interest of the world is growing about using maps in class. Another respondent wrote of the challenges they face in map usage, but that it is continually stimulating to learn about overseas locations. They said, I am bad with maps, but it is always interesting to learn about foreign places using the map, although it is hard for me to remember them. Other positive endorsements included comments such as, it's a very good idea. I like it, this work. Further example was given that it's fun to know the location of a country that I don't know. As the results have shown thus far, the majority of respondents viewed their map usage positively. However, this was not a universal perspective, given the consistently recurring percentage of those who were not engaged by using maps across the results for questions 1 to 6. One respondent commented that when I see the map, I don't think not funny, but what I see some picture of everywhere I learn is interesting. What I see map is not good. Accounting for errors in this particular feedback, the meaning can still be deciphered, that the respondent prefers pictures rather than maps as a learning tool. A more moderate outlook was also represented as one respondent indicated, it helps in some way, but there's no big influence if we cancel it. This demonstrates that for some learners, the map usage element was not an especially critical tool for their personal learning experience. To surmise, question 7 demonstrated significant positivity amongst the English communication and general English seminar respondents for the continued usage and intensification of map usage within their classes, with caveats for some learners. I'll move on to the conclusion of my presentation now. The rate of positive feedback presented so far is an endorsement by the MPQ respondents to continue with the utilization of map components in EFL classes, and indeed to expand them. This expansion could proceed through using group-based activities, where a map with overlaid place-based photographs is employed as a starting point for discussions in English about future aspirations related to travel, personal preferences, and opinions. And this would broaden discussions beyond the current pair work-centric approach and enable a greater degree of interaction amongst learners in group-based dynamics. This expansion is not limited to the physical classroom, but would also be eminently possible in online learning scenarios through breakout groups on Zoom. In contemporary settings, being cognizant of online practicalities and possibilities is increasingly important. A second potential route forward for the expansion of map usage would be a visuospatial mapping exercise often used in environmental learning. Visuospatial mapping exercises involve students expressing their spatial schemes of particular places through sketches and drawing activities. The benefit of such exercises is that they aid in the retention of map memory formation, and thus the English-speaking countries and locations the learners encounter in their lessons actively remain within the learner's knowledge base. The second benefit is the potential such student-created sketches have as for building discursive, speculative, and interrogative EFL activities. Another expansive feature that may be beneficial for visual learners would be the introduction of location-based video snippets. Previous specific research onto video usage in English language learning scenarios has shown the positive possibilities of this medium. For example, using drone footage to enhance a student's understanding of a place in tandem with a map. When viewed holistically, the study presented today indicates that map usage sparks the geographical imagination of learners, bridging the gap between language learning in the classroom and real-world locations, lived experiences, and indeed real contexts in target language countries can be challenging. The map component used in the English communication and general English seminar classes embodies a small step in closing that gap as a supporting tool in stimulating learning experiences. Thank you for listening. I hope this presentation has given you some food for thought regarding the usage of maps in your own university classes, and thank you very much.